and I am your host for Walpole Green. Each month, we will present to you a program focused on the effects of climate change and what we can do about it. I'm a member of Walpole Green. Walpole Green is a group of Walpole citizens dedicated to a healthy environment and achieving 100% renewable energy. We believe in protecting our natural resources and working to address the climate crisis in Walpole, our state, country, and the world. On March 1st, 2022, the single-use plastic bag ban will begin in Walpole. Here today, I am very pleased to be with Deekshita Kumar, Autumn Matthews, and Stephen Bond, who were involved in the passing of this environmentally significant bylaw. Deekshu has lived in Walpole for the past 22 years. She went to Elm JMS High School in Boston, and then we're at MIT, where she graduated with her bachelor's and master's degrees, where she focused on problems in the clean energy space. In the future, she is looking to use her engineering skills to make it easier for cities to develop clean energy infrastructure. Stephen Bond is currently a junior attending Walpole High and has lived in Walpole for almost 16 years. He's a member of the Walpole High School Green Team and other clubs like Speech and Student Council. Autumn Matthews is a junior studying at Walpole High School and has been part of the Walpole community since 2004. She joined the Green Team during her freshman year and is also involved in music and dance clubs. Autumn plans to study science or medicine in her future. Well, welcome all three of you. And I appreciate you coming here to talk on Walpole Green. And I think that this will be a very interesting and educational time together. So I'm going to start with one question, and is why was it important for Walpole to pass the single-use plastic bag ban bylaw that will become effective on March 1st?
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having us. This is really exciting. So just to kind of answer the question, I'll start off and then I'll pass it off to Stephen and Autumn. So I think that as a society, right, like we are realizing the dangers of being extremely reliant on plastics, right? So we're seeing like plastics on the street as litter, we're seeing it in our oceans, we're seeing it as microplastics in our home, and it's really scary, right? Especially for like those of us who are in the younger generations, like seeing this kind of use of plastic and the way that it's staying in our environment. And I think we're seeing the reaction to this realization taking the form of policies that basically regulate like the use of certain kinds of plastic. So passing like a single-use plastic bag ban is basically a first step that we can use to train us to slowly be able to reduce the plastic consumption in our society and make us more cognizant of the choices that we're making in our everyday lives. And so the reason why we targeted specifically in this bag ban, the thin film single-use plastics, is because like all plastics, right, they're really hard to get rid of in a safe way. But unlike a lot of plastics, these thin film single-use plastic bags can't be recycled. And I'll let Autumn and Stephen explain more on kind of why that's the case.
Basically, the problem with recycling is that these these thin film bags can't be recycled the way most of us like residentially recycle due to the machines used in the recycling facilities. So instead, they need to be dropped off in special places dedicated towards recycling thin film bags. And there are several of these curbside plastic bag recycling centers near grocery stores. But the problem here in Walpole is that a very small percentage of plastic bags actually make their way to the appropriate centers. And of those bags, a lot of the bags just end up in the trash anyways because they're like too contaminated to be recycled. Also, even if we recycle these plastic bags, we're still facing the problem of having to get rid of them eventually. And the problem here is that we as a society just don't have a good non-toxic way to dispose of this plastic.
And so there are two main ways to get rid of plastic bags. We can burn them or let them break down in the environment. And both of these ways have negative impacts on humans and environmental health. So burning plastic releases toxic fumes like dioxins, furans, and PCBs into the air. In Walpole, we burn all of our trash in a waste to energy facility down in Millbury. And there are filters, of course, to limit the fumes that are released, but the little that is released is still an issue. Plastic bags that break down in the environment, either because they end up as litter or in a landfill, they break down into microplastics, which are near impossible to remove from the environment. These microplastics get into our homes, our food, and eventually our bodies, and they can also have a negative impact on our own health. Bags that end up as litter have additional consequences. Not only is litter ugly, but it also can end up in our waterways, on the road, in the forest, where they become hazards for animals. So we wanted to get this bag ban passed in Walpole to help protect the environment in our town and preserve the health and general well-being of members in the Walpole community.
Thank you. What does the bag ban include?
So this bag ban, the bags affected by this ban are the thin film, single-use plastic bags that stores distribute at the point of sale. And basically what classifies this is they have to be 4 1/1000ths of an inch thick. But there are a few exceptions. Thin film plastic bags are the ones that usually come with handles and are used for like temporary storage of produce, newspapers, meat, bulks, foods, wet items, or pet waste. Those bags are exempt from this and may continue to be used. Instead of these plastic bags, retail establishments are still allowed to sell and distribute recyclable paper bags or reusable checkout bags. And when it comes to the timing of this bag ban, at the moment, large businesses that have retail spaces larger or equal to 3,500 square feet have until March 1st, 2022 to transition to non-plastic checkout bags, while small businesses have until September 1st, 2022 to make the transition. The dates still may be subject to change if needed to due to COVID-19 related issues. And if any establishments require additional time to draw down on existing inventory of thin film single-use plastic checkout bags, then these retail establishments can request exemption from the bag ban for a period of up to 6 months by contacting the Board of Health.
Okay, thank you. Very interesting. There is some flexibility in the law. What made you decide to advocate for this ban?
Sure. So I'll take this. So I saw that in a lot of the neighboring towns and a lot of my friends' towns, they had implemented a thin film plastic bag ban or some form of regulation. And I kind of wanted to just investigate whether this policy would actually benefit Walpole as well. So what happened was I emailed Selectman Benjamin Barrett, and he made some introductions, guided me towards kind of what the next steps would be. And we just kind of took it from there. And yeah, I got to meet Autumn and Stephen. And yeah, we just went forward.
That's great. How did you meet Autumn and Stephen? I know that they were in the green team at the high school, but how did you actually get to meet them in particular?
Yeah, so what happened was I got an email from, I think it was, who is the teacher who's associated with the green team?
So it actually changed. We had Mrs. B, now it's currently Mr. Hanlon at Walpole High School. So the leadership has changed, but I'm pretty sure Mrs. B originally emailed you.
Yeah, I think that's what it was. So I got an email from Mrs. B and then CC'd were Stephen and Autumn, and they sort of introduced themselves. And I think we just I think I immediately asked them to help me with something, and they just sort of took it in stride. And I'm sure we'll get the opportunity to talk about kind of what they did.
Okay. How did you prepare for the May 1st, 2021 Walpole Town Meeting article?
So we started off by getting a lot of data. Back in February of 2020, I brought 2 of my friends to go stand outside the Walpole Stop and Shop with me, and we stood outside by the door for about 2 hours and interviewed over 100 customers through a brief survey. We asked how many reusable bags they owned, how often they actually used them, and just their overall opinion on the possibility of a plastic bag ban in Walpole. And with this information, Stephen, Dikshita, and I created graphs displaying the general consensus that the people were either pro bag ban or had mixed feelings towards it. About 70% of the people interviewed had over 6 reusable bags. A lot of people had over 12 even. And 48% they said they usually remember to use them while they're shopping. And 78% of the people we interviewed had a positive opinion on the idea of having a plastic bag ban. So that was just encouraging to hear.
And in addition to going around asking and taking surveys, we also did some research looking up on neighboring towns that took up a bag ban, like Sharon, Canton, Medfield, and Dedham. And by doing this, we were able to work with the recycling committee to come up with the draft of the bylaw, which basically involved picking and choosing the parts of the bylaw that we felt would best apply to Walpole. And once we had a draft of our bylaw, we actually just cold emailed the RTMs from all the precincts and got their feedback on the bylaw. It gave us feedback. It gave people the opportunity to bring up concerns and ask questions. One of the main bits of feedback that we got was actually to have a clause addressing flexibility due to the pandemic, which we eventually incorporated. And having the opportunity to actually ask for feedback before presenting the article in May was really helpful for our presentation.
Yeah, and then actually what happened was, so we then like went through the entire petitioning process where we just sort of asked people for thoughts on the bylaw. I think we then called up about 80 businesses in Walpole that would be affected, that like actually have point of sale bags. And so we asked them like, you know, how they would be affected by the ban. We asked them for their thoughts, their concerns. And so we came into that town meeting with like lots and lots and lots of data to support why we thought this would be a good next step for Walpole.
Okay, that sounds great. What surprised you in doing this work?
So I think I was personally very surprised by how open so many people in the town seemed to be. Like the vast majority of the businesses that we called actually said that they had already switched over away from a plastic alternative. So they had switched to something like paper or cloth, or they said that switching over to not using plastic would not be that big of an issue for them. Like it would just involve a phone call to a manager or something along those lines. So I think that was definitely very surprising, was everyone was like, oh yeah, like we're already thinking about this. And we were like, great. And then took it from there.
Okay, what were some of the roadblocks?
So I can also take this one. So we had some pretty vocal opposition to the bag ban at first. A lot of it was coming from people who are pretty pro plastic, which, you know, is completely understandable. Like plastic is very useful, it's very cheap. And I think they were arguing that plastic doesn't really have as big of a negative impact as we think it does. And so they were basically saying like, right, if plastic isn't that bad, then why should I inconvenience myself for something that at the end of the day might not even make a tangible difference, right? And I get that, right? Because like a lot of these sorts of environmentally related efforts can be really difficult to tackle when you don't really see the effect of your actions immediately, right? But the problem with these sorts of things is that the consequences aren't immediate, they build up over time, right? And so the point at which you're actually able to notice the consequences, well, at that point, it's kind of too late to fix. So yes, in theory, right, like the burning of one plastic bag is not going to cause us all immediate huge health problems the next day. But over time, as we bury and like burn more plastic, we, you know, are going to see more negative environmental impacts. So I think we kind of addressed their concerns by saying like, you know, it's important to address this while we still can. And I think another really big point of concern from the opposition was regarding the impact on small businesses, which was really good feedback. Like we heard that concern. And so after we heard that, we really tried to make sure that we talked to a representative sample set of the businesses in Walpole who would be affected. So it was really, you know, like after people said, hey, like you got to talk to small businesses, like we made an Excel spreadsheet. We looked through like, I think the Department of Commerce in Walpole's like list of all the businesses in Walpole. We filtered that list down to the businesses that have plastic or might be distributing something. And we called as many of them as we possibly could.
Okay, thank you. A lot of hard work that went on. How did it affect you personally?
Well, for me personally, since joining the plastic bag ban, I really noticed like the environmental impacts we as a community have on our town. And I feel like I've been more prone to seeing litter scattered around our community and like potential items that could damage the earth, like plastic bags. And also through this experience, I've begun to understand that we as like a community have the ability to make change, and for like a greater outside source. And it may like seem impossible, but like with enough work, we can always do enough with it. And it's also really inspired me to hopefully study environmental sciences in college.
That's great. So it sounds like it sort of put you towards a career that you think you might want to pursue.
Yeah.
This experience. That's great.
And then so for me personally, I definitely agree with Stephen, because a few years ago, I would never have thought that I, as like a teenager in high school, would have been able to help pass a law in Walpole to help our environment. And just joining the bag ban committee and being a part of the Green Team Club at Walpole High School led me to become more conscientious about my impact on the environment as well as my family's. So just being a part of Green Team, we stopped like using the plastic bags at grocery stores as much as possible. We started composting, and I've just personally made an effort to support more small businesses and try to limit my fast fashion shopping. And this bag ban process was very educational and provided me with so many more opportunities to pass on information that I learned to my friends and my family just regarding preserving our planet.
So it sounds like you found a voice and you found that it can be more powerful than you realized.
Yes, definitely.
That's terrific.
Yeah, I think actually like on the exact same note, like my biggest takeaway from this was that even young people like us can have a really big effect, like impact on our town. Like it's really easy, right, when you're young to believe that these sorts of large societal, decisions are made behind walls and by, like scary magical people with power. And so I definitely like had a few moments where I truly understood that the people who are making these decisions and advocating for change are just like human beings, and very kind ones, I might add, who, really just like want to do what they think is best for our town. And I also found that like people are very willing to help if you just ask. So it was like, overall, it was a really great learning experience for, I think, all of us. And it's definitely given me the confidence to actually initiate and advocate for change when I think it's necessary. So I think that was, it was a good experience all around.
So it sounds like you all three of you have really not only studied democracy, you have worked democracy, and you now understand the power of democracy.
Yeah, I think it's like, it's one of the things, right? Like I don't think it's not something that you realize when you're younger, right? Like you don't realize how lucky we are to be in a place where the people who are living in the society can actually dictate the rules of the society, right? And that is, it's really powerful and very cool. And I highly recommend it. If anyone is, young, or anyone really just has an idea and is like, I think our town should look into this, they should totally just like reach out and just figure it out. Like I don't think there's really a rule book here. It's just, you talk to the right people, they will get you connected if they, if you care about it enough, they will help you find the right people and you can get a lot of things done.
Well, that's fantastic to hear. Do you think that the single-use plastic bag ban should be expanded in any way?
So I don't think immediately, because a lot of us are kind of still going through an adjustment because of the pandemic, right? Like a lot of things are changing at once. And I think especially for the businesses that could be impacted, that could be really stressful. Like they've already gone through a lot. So there's no need to kind of push more. But I will say that I think in the future, there's a possibility that we follow in the footsteps of like a state like Vermont. So Vermont has regulations where they can regulate the use of polystyrene containers and single-use plastic straws. And so I think that that could be like a reasonable next step. But yeah, we'll have to see kind of, you know, what the effects of that regulation are in Vermont in order to determine whether this is something that we should even like consider in Massachusetts, right? But yeah, I think that there are like kind of reasonable next steps. It's just a question of when.
One step at a time.
Indeed, yes.
And perhaps you could work, if you meet with other people who have similar interests, it could end up being a statewide ban, like Vermont.
Yep. No, absolutely.
Yeah. So I have one more question. How many other towns in Massachusetts have a similar bylaw? And do you know of any states that have statewide laws banning single-use plastic bags?
So yeah, there's actually multiple states, California, Connecticut, Delaware, Hawaii, Maine, New York, Oregon, and Vermont all have statewide laws that ban the use of single-use thin film plastic bags. And as of December of 2021, including Walpole, there are 147 cities and towns in Massachusetts that regulate the distribution of plastic bags, either through bans or fees.
I want to thank Dikshita, Stephen, and Autumn for coming and sharing your information and your story with us. Truly appreciate that you are residents of Walpole. I hope you stay here, and that thank you so much for helping us be that much healthier with this plastic bag ban. Please visit our Facebook page. It has a lot of interesting articles regarding the climate crisis and things that you can do for it. Thank you again, and I'll see you next month.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, thank
You're
you for the
welcome.
opportunity.